Alrighty, guys. So I've got a small little project that I'm going to start working on, and that is going to be some more buildings for my City of Heathen Gate, for my Mordheim skirmish campaigns Ninth Age game. So far, I've got 3 buildings that I've thrown together. I've been using the Devs and Dice method, mostly just following along with those. I bought all the stuff that I needed, the foam cord and the coffee stirs and all that, and I've just started throwing stuff together. I didn't really do a lot of planning, which you can kind of see. I made a few errors. Let's talk about what I want to change on these buildings first. Right, okay. So, first off, just these little posters, I used the crappiest Brother inkjet or whatever, and they're super duper low quality. So I'm hoping eventually I can get either a nice printer or I can trick someone with a good printer into printing out some posters for me. So also with this smaller house. So, okay, actually before I talk about the houses, let me talk about my building philosophy for this city, this town. So number one, modularity. I don't want to do one of those tables where I've got a bunch of, a full diorama built with every single stone carved into everything and every pathway already laid out. Those do look beautiful and amazing, and I love how they look, but I'm just shooting for more of a playability angle with this table. Which again, yeah, leads me to my second point: playability. Again, there's this problem that you run into with Mordheim and trying to make buildings, where if we take a look at stairs, for example, these are the 2 types of stairs that I'm okay with. Because if you do realistic looking stairs, like stairs that would actually exist to scale with the buildings that you're looking at, they'd basically kind of be like this, but without these little slots, and you can't put a model on that. And I want to try to avoid putting any parts of these houses where you can't stand a model on it. So that means either for stairs we got to go big, wide, flat stairs that you can stick a whole model on, or you got to have little slits in here so you can just cram them into that little hole. But generally, yeah, I just don't want any big, huge pieces of rubble or anything that block where you can stand. These little roof sections, cutting it a little close where, yeah, you can fit a little model in there, but I don't know. I just generally want to avoid trying to build any sections that you can't stick a model in. Which also, another thing that leads into is this. So if we take a look at this medium house right here, you see I just went with building one small house, one medium house, and one large house. See, fortunately for me, I have perfect sized hands, so if I wanted to move a model underneath this little area, it would not be a problem for me. But if I had, some Shrek looking hands, I would struggle a lot more to finagle a model inside of this. So I do think I might actually edit this a bit to just hack at this with some pliers or something, just to create a little bit more room for people's hands to maneuver models inside here. With the small house, something that I wanted to change or would like to do differently is, you see, so you got an opening at the front door, you got this little rope that you can use to climb up, but once you're up here, I want another path for you to be able to build a bridge off of, and be able to come in from one angle and then have an escape and or a place from another bridge, or a reason to use this house as a route of transportation. Another thing you can see with this small house, I got lazy and just started going a bunch of spaces with the wood. Also, this whole thing was just really poorly measured. The bottom layer is 2.5, or one of them was 2.5, and then this middle section is 3 inches. I want to say, or no, that was 2.5. That was 2. That's 2.25. So I'll definitely just make sure to actually measure this stuff next time. You tell the windows, they're just like a little crooked, some of them. So I will definitely actually measure that out too. You know, I guess whoever was building this in Heathen Gate, he just, they didn't really pay him enough to care. Okay, and then here is the big house. Oh yeah, this guy. You might have to move the camera up for this guy. So this guy, I guess it's like a manor maybe, or like a tavern or something. I generally like it, except I dislike on this side how it's just all completely flat. I feel like I kind of fell for that scheme of like when you make your first house in Minecraft ever and you just make a giant wooden block. You know, this like doesn't have any depth to it. So I think I might want to add something here. Maybe like a balcony or something, just jutting off out of here. Maybe like a fireplace or something like coming up. Just to add something. You also see that the whole wall, I put a little too much force in one of the beams here, and now the whole thing is like bowing out. Slightly a problem, but not like terrible, not super noticeable. Some stuff that I do like though is I just went absolutely ham with like this oil paint and just didn't wipe it or anything, and it left some pretty like convincing like grime streaks. I quite liked how that turned out on the inside here, so I'm hoping I can replicate that on my next house. Also, I went for like moss in the crevices here, which I also kind of like. I think it does a good job sort of breaking up that, what do you call that, saturatedness, hueless, just like the complete lack of like vibrant colors. I like that it kind of breaks that up. I like the moss. I'm going to do more of that, I think, which I think will also just sort of be a general theme for the board as a whole. Will just sort of be like overgrownness. That'll probably lean a little bit more into with the future buildings that I plan on making. But yeah, overall, I think they turned out pretty well. I do wish that I had put in a little more time into planning, honestly. I saw like when other people make the stucco, they'll use like a texture thing, like a sandy thing. I don't think it looks super a ton like I think it looks fine. I think it's perfectly functional, but if the goal is to like sort of recreate that texture of like wattle and daub, I think that the like just watered down, I think I did watered down hole filler. I honestly kind of forget, and I'm kind of worried. But yeah, so I think like watered down hole filler, just like dab that on, and it made this like really nice sort of like stucco-y texture, which I think I'm going to try to recreate too. This top building, yeah, I think I might add like a little path or something up here, maybe like a little tiny balcony outpost or something, just to have another place where bridges can come out of. So yeah, that's everything for these buildings. Now I want to talk a little bit about what I want to do for these future buildings. I have 4 general buildings that I want to make. So one, I want to make like a sort of tavern-y type of house. Just 2 corners that can like be slotted together or like turned away from each other to be used as either like one house that's like broken in the middle, or just 2 corners of 2 houses. I think that'll be relatively easy and like fill up a good chunk of the table. With that, I'm thinking, yeah, one will overhang, one will have a little porch section, and then I want some balconies and bow windows. Is that what it's called? I don't know if that's the actual term or not, but like those little boxes you see in these like Tudor-looking houses, or these like German houses or whatever they are, where there's just like a little like box and like a little window like jutting out that you can like step inside of. I want to have some of those. Okay, the other one, so it like a double row house, like 2 shops kind of thing. I feel like that'll just add to the town feel, make it... That is like a thing of cities, is that all the houses are like up against each other. which with all the individual houses, you can't really get that. So maybe in the future I'll even make a few more of these, but for now I'm just going to make one of those, like a double house, just to get a little bit more of that town feel. Then I want to build like a centerpiece. So that's going to be where the bell tower comes in. Originally I was going to try to make this either circular or hexagonal or octagonal or something, but I decided against that because that is going to be requiring way too much measuring and cutting. So I'm just going good old squares for that. I want to put a little gibbet on this side, a bell in the bell tower, a weather vane, lots of little needy little 3D printed bits, hopefully if I can find them. And lastly, I want to build like a church sort of thing. A church, again, this one 2 corners, so that they could be either split apart to be 2 different buildings, or they could be just put together as one broken building. Yeah, so that's the buildings I want to work on building. And then in the future, stuff that I just want to work on. So I want to make some more city risers. So I got these 2 ones that I've made so far, which I'm generally pretty happy with how they came out. This guy, I don't really care for this like vibrant yellow I went with. I was figuring after the dry brushing and the washing, it would have gotten brought down so much that you wouldn't really notice it. So I went the absolute brightest yellow possible, but it definitely still sort of stands out. But I generally do like that they add some elevation and some versatility to the map. Like, you can just spread them a little bit apart, sort of build like an alleyway. You can like put a bridge over it or whatever to have some, have a choke point. You just, and push them together, keep it as like a city, town square, whatever. I guess get them actually together. There you go. Or, you can just have them on complete opposite ends of the table, and then you can just have like the town in the middle in between. Now, this terrain that I'm replacing, so I used to have this like battlefield, I forget what it was called, battlefield terrain or something. This like cardboard stuff, except this stuff is really, this is sort of what I'm going to try to recreate with that church piece. It's my thought, but I dislike these as well, for one, the fact that they're all clipped together, they just fall apart whenever you try to pick them up or move them or anything. Slightly a problem. If you bump them, they're literally cardboard, so that they just like they fall over, they flop around. They're like, they look neat, but like when it just comes to playability, they are pretty rough with how weightless they are and how much they fall apart. And the whole modular angle about how you're supposed to put them together and be able to move them however you want. I ended up having to glue basically every single one of these clips together, because otherwise these things just fall apart. They do not stay together. So this is what I'm going to try to replace. I'm going to try to replace this with that other corner church piece. This is sort of going to be replaced by that like church bell tower thing. Again, the cardboard. This one is actually a bit more stable. This one I don't mind as much. But I don't know. The cardboard looks kind of like dinky, and it's got that real like glossy sheen on it, so it really reflects in the light. I'm hoping at some point I can record some battle reports for this, so I do want these buildings to look at least decent on camera. Right now, I've got everything broken down into 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I think I got 15 steps here. So my plan is I'm going to check in at every point in between each of these steps and then show you how it's going. Alright, so let's get started on this. Okay, 1 step in. We got the bases cut out. We've already hit a disaster. So last time I used MDF, and that's nice because it doesn't warp at all. But it was a real pain to actually cut. Well, I started off by trying to use a Dremel tool on the MDF, well, which is what I ended up using. But I used one of these little grinding discs, and it smelled like actual cancer when I was cutting it, which I've since realized I don't think it's supposed to smell like. Well, because what I had realized was happening was that this like little grinding disc got ground down to just a single nub. It was entirely worn away, and I don't know if it was burning or something that I was smelling, but it was definitely not good. Also, I just heard that like MDF generally not good for you to like breathe in all that dust and all that. So this time I tried using just straight up regular good old craft wood. for two reasons. One, I figured, well, I can just put the texture right into the wood itself, right into the base, which would be slightly easier. I figure this will pick up good texture and whatnot. I know this, compared to MDF, will warp horribly, so my plan around that is just use some Mod Podge and pray to God. That's what I'm working with right now. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bases. Yeah, so I tried a couple of things. I tried the Dremel. These actually did not end up being that easy to cut. So then I ended up going with I tried using the good old just straight up hand saw. That ended up being a little bit of a problem too, because, you know, it's not actually as easy to saw as I would have initially thought. What I ended up going with was just the old classic box cutter. Just do 100 passes and then snap it. This stuff I got because I thought it was going to be 100 times easier to work with than MDF, and ended up not being a whole lot easier to work with. These little corner pieces, I can tell that's probably going to be a little bit of a problem, that these don't actually look like boards that are like broken. They're all just like perfectly cut. So I'm going to do the old thing where I have tons and tons of flock and dirt and grass and stuff all over this floor, which is fine. That's the nice thing about Mordheim, is you can just fix all the problems that you have at the beginning by the end of the project. You know, you get lots and lots of opportunities to fix stuff. Well, that only took forever. But we finally cut all the windows out of all the various houses. Here's Church Corner 1. Oh, Tavern Corner 1, Tavern Corner 2, and Church 2, and the Shop Row House, and the Bell Tower over here. This, I decided to make a stone little base. That's just weighing it down. So I'm going to go for a stone thing that I just carved into this foam core with the paper peeled off for the bell tower. Ended up having to make some new bases for the bell tower as well. Okay, so we got all the foam core glued on. That only took about forever. So here is the centerpiece, the bell tower. The more I look at this, the more I don't really like how perfect and smooth these rounded floors are. So I think I'm really gonna chip them up and mess them up. Also, I can tell this thing is extraordinarily unstable. I very much so, like, just all these foam pieces just snapping off constantly. So I am very much so thinking that I should have pinned it. Looks pretty decent so far. Here is the church. I got really lazy with the flying buttresses, so they are just little triangle pieces of foam. Oh. Also, I realized I did not line up these windows at all, so I just sort of cut them and then moved them where I wanted to afterwards. Second piece. Looks as such. And here we have the overhanging corner piece. I realized this needs a little support up here to actually get that lined up flush with that second floor. Otherwise it's hanging down a little bit. Yeah, here's that other side. I'm experimenting with some cracks and stuff in the walls to see if that shows up afterwards, but I think with the plastering step, all of that is just gonna disappear. Okay, second corner piece. We got a big old roof on that one. Balcony door, bay window. This one honestly looks pretty good. Okay, and the double house. This one honestly I think is my favorite so far, just from the composition of how it looks and all that, scale wise and everything. Yeah, I'm excited to see how these roofs turn out. I think they'll look pretty neat. This might honestly be a little tight, so I think I'm just gonna have to put just the railings just here. Otherwise, you're not gonna be able to get your hand in there. Okay, but that is all the foam placed. Now I have just got to start with the timber work, all the timbers on the sides, and place all the floors and everything. So, I'm curious to figure out which of these steps is taking the longest. Alright, I'll let you guys know. Oh, there's truly a graveyard of coffee stir sticks and foam scraps now. I've finally finished timbering up everything. I think I've probably cut through like 1,000 coffee stir sticks. Probably not actually that many, but a lot of coffee stir sticks. So we got all the floors coffee stirred, the roofs. They got some supports on them now, some frames. Oh god, this took so long. Probably a whole like 5 minutes for all of these houses all together. Okay, another one. We got the coffee stir sticks. Inside. This house has been a disaster. Not a disaster, but it has been extraordinarily... It has been the problem child, for sure. I had to include this support because there was so much weight coming down from how I angled this top floor by giving it 0 actual support against the base itself that I kind of had to super glue this, which is almost acting like a tension bridge or something to actually like pull this entire side up by having this be super glued to that pole. It's not perfect. You can't like reaching in here is not ideal, but it works. Again, we got a million coffee stir sticks. If I ever do this again in the future with this raised level, I'm not going to go full corner to corner. I will just go just on one side. Now I understand why every single one of those houses that I've seen to find on the internet did something like that. These church buildings I'm mostly pretty happy with. They're turning out pretty well. I used the jumbo popsicle sticks, which had been saving me some time there. I started all the floors. I got to finish filling out the floor tiles. I just ran out of them that I've been cutting. Church side number 2. I've been cutting out those jumbo sticks. This one I finished the floor on. Maybe it looks a little too perfectly cut than I would have ideally preferred, but I guess I could still rip it up a bit, make it look a little more torn about. And here is the bell tower. It's got all the... I put some little bridges on there too. The roof section. Alright, that's where we're at so far. Okay, so we have finished the next step in the process. We've put all the main big supports and floors and stones and all that stuff. Here's what the church building looks like now. So I do think, well, I got kind of lazy with the bricking process. Just cut out some EVA foam and slap that on. And I realized it'll probably not look like a brick wall, but more so just like a facade, which I think I'm gonna try playing into and making this sort of look like a stone wall facade for the church. Next up, I gotta texture everything, add some plaster and spackle and all that stuff, which hopefully will fill in, kind of acting like grout in between all the cracks, which I'm hoping will make it read more as like a stony texture, hopefully. I think I'm also going to go for like the multicolored brick sort of thing, which would hopefully add some visual interest as well, so it's not just like a blob of gray. This here is the bell I've made for the bell tower. I found this on one of them 3D printing sites, and I thought it looked pretty much perfect for what I'm going for. This, I really hate, like with a fiery passion, that whole idea of oh god, what do you call it when you paint stuff in multiple steps or whatever. Oh Christ, I can't believe I'm forgetting what that's called. But anyway, this is eventually going to get glued in, and then we'll have a rope hanging down from it. But this is probably going to put a fair amount of detail, getting the whole brass paint and the verdigris and all that stuff. And I'm not sure if I want to either try to use the rope as a means to like climb up the bell tower, or if I just want to add a separate ladder. So that was one church. Boom, here's another corner. Ooh, look at all them foam bricks in there. Hey. The row house is now all shingled up. It's got timbers on it, all that framing. I think at this point, pretty much all the terrain is in like what I would consider a playable, tabletop ready. This could get played with right now. The problem house. Again, this just seems like playable. You can reach your hand in there, move models in there. Not ideal though. I kind of wish I did like the big floor here and then the tiny floor on the top level, which, that's fine. Ultimately, it looks fine. It'll play well, and I learned some lessons for the future, for sure. This one I'm a lot more happy with, this sort of corner tavern piece. The whole balcony. I might add a little bit of a railing to this too, just a tiny little bit. No, it looks pretty good, pretty happy with that one. The bell tower now has supports for where this bell can go. I cracked up the corners a little bit so it didn't look like a rounded, still kind of looks like it's a rounded piece of wood, but now you could at least pretend that they were straight and then got bent and broken off. Alright, so let's grab this bell. So eventually this will be hanging from inside there. It'll get glued in, and then there'll be a little rope hanging from this little wheel, and that'll go all the way down. I decided I'm giving up on both that weather vane that was going to go on top and the gibbet, the cage that was going to be hanging on the side. I figure those things, if I do want to add them, I can just paint them and throw them on whenever. But yep, this is this step of the process. Now I just got to add spackle to everything, and I got to add grout and whatever else, all that kind of stuff. I realized, well, I accidentally bought the tiniest little can ever, so I'm hoping that this whole filler, maybe if I mix it up with some water, will be enough to fill everything in. Perhaps not though, so I guess we shall see how that will go. But I will let you know how that goes. I'll throw some sand and debris and everything on bits to just sort of hide some more transitions between like these little gaps where like the foam meets the wall. Oh, here's a really bad gap right in here. You can't really see, but it's a pretty decent one right there that'll fill up with sand. Okay, so when I am done with the texturing, I will be back, and then after that we'll be ready to paint everything. Finally, these will start to come together. All right, I'll see you then. Well, I meant to do a quick update. Immediately after putting the texture on, which you can kind of see under this paint, there's some texture there. Well, I just kind of forgot to do that. So far, every other step in this process has taken 5+ episodes of Behind the Bastards to get through, but that texture, I just popped that on, and that was less than a whole episode. So I just went straight to the next step, without even thinking about it, and I did the old black Mod Podge paint on everything to give it a bit more stiffness and structure, fill in those absorbent areas. So far, well, that texture did not actually fill in the cracks and crevices, so I'm pretty happy with that. Still looks like these have got some battle damage on them. Everything does look just a lot more uniform now that it's got this black on it. So I guess it's even more ready to just go and be put on the table at this point. Well, this time I'm going to try just zenithaling the entire thing. And by zenithaling, I mean basically just priming this entire thing white with an airbrush. And then I'm going to try doing a bit of a slap chop, but not speed paints, the old homemade speed paints of inks and medium and mostly water, which, speaking of Mod Podge, ain't no one got money for that whole name brand PVA glue. So, I had to go out back and make my own PVA glue, fetch a horse with a lame leg. You got to make it cheap. But this is the double house. Again, pretty happy with how this one looks. Still might be my favorite. I'm noticing now it looks like these little roof sections look like they might have gone a little uneven. Looks like they're sort of like bending in a bit at this top section here, which I'm afraid to try pushing this out and putting any force on it because I think the whole thing will just snap. So I'm just going to not do that. I'm just going to live with it how it is. There's not really any supports here at all. It's just straight up this one hot glue connection. So maybe I should have had like a straight beam going up and down or something to give this more support. Originally what I should have done is just cut this whole front
facade piece out as one piece rather than as 3 separate sections. But, you know, that's the price of not planning this out. Even though I did plan out most of it, there's always just more to plan out for next time, for sure. The shingles, I'm hoping that these will, once I get the airbrush on them, they'll look better. You know, the black paint didn't stick very well to most of these. It just ran off because that was sort of that shiny surface on the front. Underneath, it looks, well, it's not that bad on camera, but in person you could tell there's lots of missing spots in there. So my hope is just no one ever looks at it, and or during one of the wash steps, that'll sort of get covered up and hidden. So yeah, so base coat is basically just going to be all white. Then we're going to speed paint it. Then we're going to do some dry brushing just over the whole thing, the old bone everywhere. I'm going to try getting pretty artsy-fartsy with the washes is what I'm thinking. But we're getting close to the point where it's like the fast steps. Because the base coating everything, that watery black Mod Podge mixture just takes absolutely forever. The church corners, so the grout, the texturing stuff did sort of fill in a little bit of the cracks to sort of look like proper mortar, which you know, I'm not mad with how it's turning out so far. I do think for all these spaces between where these like cracks are, I'm gonna go for like the Minecraft mossy cobble texture, like at the very end of this process, and just see how it looks filling in all these cracks with like a textured green mossy substance. This, I think I'm gonna go for a checkered floor, like a white and black checkered floor. Yeah, but this definitely could have turned out a lot worse. I think now that it's got some paint and texture on it, these church corners are shaping up a bit better. I do think in the grand scheme of playability, these will probably be the most useful playability wise, just because you can actually like fit your hand in here and move a model in here, and you can even fit an ogre in here. Whereas any of these other buildings, you're only gonna be able to fit tiny little goblins in them. So that's the corner. Here is the problem house. This one, of course, every single step of the way, like just making it this way has been a pain. It was real tough getting under these timbers, but I managed to do a decent job of like getting some black paint in there. I don't think anyone will ever be looking up and underneath and just like deep into these corners here, but definitely wanted to try to get some black in them just so they didn't see the bright balsa wood color showing through. Yeah, but this one looks pretty decent so far. The shingles, as always. I watched some other videos of everyone else making Mordheim houses, and I realized in their roofs, they don't have like holes like this, like a kind of like raftered thing. The whole roof section is just like a million planks of wood, just like this floor. And then they just put shingles on top of that, which I guess makes more sense in reality, that you don't put holes through your roof for rain to come in through, and also it avoids the nightmare that is like painting the underside of shingles. So any future buildings I make, I will definitely remember that. I guess I did kind of technically do that with this sort of little bow window sort of deal. I think these are going to be shaping up pretty well when we're done with them. The other corner piece. The texture isn't exactly showing up great on this pure black, but I do actually quite like how that texture looks. That we got some Mod Podge dryage there, but that's fine. I think I put a dollop too much soap in there by accident. I didn't intend to put too much soap in there. That's just I just squeezed a little bit too much in my Mod Podge black mixture. Oh, you can see it pretty bad. Well, you see, the problem is that like sometimes in like the thinner areas, that like the soapiness like dries white. But the buildings do smell really good right now, which I did not think that soap smell would last. So hopefully like all this stuff doesn't just like rub off or anything. That bodes ill. Actually, I just think that might not have dried fully yet. Okay, yeah, maybe I should give it a minute more to dry before I start spray airbrushing. Also, oh god, I hope to Christ. I know something broke in my airbrush. I don't know if I bent the needle or something, but I know something needed to be replaced. That I hope to Christ I have a spare part for. Otherwise, this might turn into a nightmare really quickly. Otherwise, I might just have to call up old Jeff Bezos and order up a can of white paint. A good old rattle can. Alright, so the bell tower, definitely looking a lot better now that it is all primed up. So I realized I didn't actually know what I was going to do construction-wise as to like what material I wanted this tower to supposedly be made out of. Because if it's like wattle and daub, which I guess I'm kind of going for with the whole foam core texture thing, then it really should have like supports going all through it, all the way around, and especially in the middle of these arches. So I think I'm going to just paint this whole thing red, call it some sort of brick type of thing going on, which I'm not exactly sure how it's going to look, but you know, I imagine it will be nice, bright, and red, then it'll really grab the attention and certainly just have the color of a centerpiece thing, whereas everything else is going to be quite drab and bleachy or whatever. Also, dear God, after this whole texturing process, my table has just become even more of a mess than it's ever been in the past, or my entire craft room as a whole, actually. So I think I might actually have to do some cleaning, but I like to wait until I have the whole project done. Might actually, now that I'm onto the painting stage though, might just have to move on to the cleaning stage. The bell, this is going to get painted separately. I normally just vehemently oppose sub-assembly, but I think we are going to have to suffer through some sub-assembly because this will be impossible to paint inside. The wheel I Mod Podged up though. This I'll probably do the same exact thing with the whole. Well, this should go real fast. This will just be all brown. I've also, you know, I got bored in the middle of all of this, so I started 3D printing some stuff too. I absolutely love this hobgoblin from, I believe it is Fabelzel, and these guys were actually free, which was amazing. They were on Thingiverse for free, which, let's see if we can get this guy to focus at all. I love this old school aesthetic. It has got nice chunky details. It has got some fingers that can actually be highlighted, but whatever. You can tell he is an old school looking model. I absolutely love this. Definitely want to try to find more models like that, because otherwise I found some other like Mordheim looking models, but these guys actually cost money. And I don't like these guys nearly as much as that hobgoblin. Like, well, you can't see these fingers, but if you could tell that there's no way you can build up any highlights on these guys. Again, just look at this hobgoblin. You can tell the stitching on that hood. You can actually paint those and pick those out. That nose you can actually build up highlights on. Again, bandit guy. There's no way you're building up multiple colors on these tiny little thin little fingers. Okay, but that's everything in the process so far. So I think I'm going to zenithal everything, base coat everything white. Yeah, I guess I'll check in for just a quick minute to show how that process goes. That should only take just a couple of minutes. I think that should be pretty fast. And then we'll go on to, well, I'll have to mix up a million different little homemade speed paints and then get some colors on everything. That'll probably take like forever. I'll check back in a minute. Okay, so the whitening has been completed. We got the bell wheel and the bell all primed up white. So I'm thinking for this, I'm just gonna cover this in like a tealish thing to sort of be verdigris, and then I'll dry brush on some brassy color to make it look like, what do you call that? Oxidized patina of a look. So that pretty happy with. Also, I decided this, instead of adding like a rope or a ladder or anything to the bell tower, like a rope ladder, I'm just gonna add, you know, the rope coming down from this wheel will be the way that you're supposed to get up and down that thing, which I think will be cool and fun. Okay. So everything definitely looks a whole lot better now. The airbrush was a horrible mistake. I most definitely should have gone with the rattle can.
I did not happen to have a skull white, pure white rattle can. Let's just put this up here. Yeah. But you know, the house looking pretty good now that it's got some white on it. You can sort of see those details coming through. I airbrushed everything. That took about 10 years just to get everything base coated white. Then I also hit everything with a white dry brush to sort of do that classic faux edge highlight. White dry brush just to give everything that sort of faux edge highlight kind of look. Once I get that sort of glaze paint on it. The house looking pretty good, You can now see the textures now that we got that white paint on it. Which, you know, that old spackly, plastery look I think was pretty good. I'm pretty happy that like the wood grain you can still actually see through both the Mod Podge coat and this white airbrush coat. Be able to pick up on that at all, but there's some grain showing through, which I think will add a lot to actually making this look like wood. Boom, bip bop booey. We are reaching the end game. We are slowly crawling our way towards it. I'm honestly, I think the church building, I think it'll look pretty good once we get that like moss filling in all these cracks and all of that. That was church 1. Church 2. Oh, that's what the Mod Podge code is for. Bit Bop Billy. This thing was getting pretty weak, so I had to double super glue it up. Still probably not as strong as I'd ideally like it, but I think it'll survive up to general playtitude. Okay, and then the bell tower. Oh god, I need more space on my table, or I need to actually clean this thing. Hey, alright, the bell tower. Looking pretty good. Some of these supports have been snapping off and I had to glue them back on, which might become a problem in the future. This thing was definitely on the more difficult side to actually get that airbrushing white all over everything. But also, the more I look at this bottom, I thought the more I added paint and stuff on top, it would sort of shrink and contract and sort of undo some of this warping that has occurred. That doesn't exactly seem to have been the case, but I think once it's on the table, it'll be pretty minimal, I think. Okay, so I'm gonna just slap chop everything now, and then I will check back in with you guys once that's happened. Oh god, lads, we have had a disaster. The slap chop method has not worked at all. Turns out you cannot just thin down cheap craft paints and then expect them to work like good proper glazes. Now honestly, on the churches it wasn't terrible. They now look nice and gray, and we got some red stones in there now. I've been considering I could do some yellow stones too, just to add some even more visual interest. But I figure once I throw some posters and graffiti and mold and all that stuff on it, I think like green will be like a pretty strong third color on this by the time I'm done. So I think gray, red, green will probably look pretty good. But yeah, no, this slap chop method, you could really see it with this wood. Like it does look brown, but if you can tell, it is like super duper thin. You can still at least in person, you can very clearly see the like white primer texture and all that stuff. So pretty much quite the failure. On this little dirt section, it looks pretty half decent. But I would have rathered have an impasto or whatever, that like just like a brushstroke texture rather than this sort of watery tide mark look that I got from these watered down paints. And it even managed to like fill in some crevices, which I might have to go in with a hobby knife and just like cut out these holes where like the paint filled in and acted like PVA, which I'm pretty sure these cheap craft paints are basically just like dyed PVA glue or something. Like they're not very, I don't know, they gotta go on pretty horribly. So, but every single project always has this part where it truly looks disastrous. Here on the wood, it gave truly terrible coverage. I'd probably need like 5 more layers before that even starts to look like it's like a brown wood. I will say, using these like these wooden boards and just carving in a texture, it actually looks decent. It looks better than I probably would have initially expected. But yeah, these like watermarks are the absolute bane of any like crafter, because they just so clearly indicate that this is not on a giant scale and that these are just tiny little miniatures because of the way that surface tension works. It's just like a dead giveaway that these are miniatures. So these like watery marks, absolute last thing you want. I should have just went on real thick with the craft paints, like normal method. So I could conceivably do multiple layers, but that would probably take about 10 years. Here's like the shingles. They look pretty rough. I think I'm probably going to do a second coat on the shingles is my game plan, and then everything else I'm just going to slop on a obscene amount of an oil wash. Honestly, it's probably not even going to be like an oil wash. I'm just going to like slather everything with like a layer of oil paint, just like oil brown on everything, and then just wipe away the like centers of the panels of the like plaster. Or ideally it'll dry totally perfectly at some point and allow me to paint acrylic on top. Hopefully, maybe not. I might have to matte varnish them after the oil. I do have a feeling that the oil is gonna save this. I feel pretty good about that. But like, Jesus, like this looks really bad. Where this brown paint like dried like wet water. Yeah, it felt like I was painting with like coffee. And I really tried to like smooth it out to avoid this happening. Honestly, like the bone on white doesn't look half bad, but the browns and the reds look truly awful. Also, the super light gray looks decent. So the super duper light colors, I think it worked fairly well, but anything where I needed some true saturation, it just failed miserably. So yeah, I'm just gonna slather everything with oils. So I think actually I'm gonna do some splotches of green, splotches of red, splotches of yellow all over everything, and then I'm gonna connect everything with that brown. And then those different sort of colors should add a little bit more visual interest. I don't plan on going in or like doing a specific color for the shingle, so I do think I'm gonna have to manually fix these with another layer of craft paint, just not thinned down to a glaze this time. And you know, a little bit of texture from a thick paint on the shingles I honestly think would look fine to add some of that like maybe a little bit more of that like wood grain sort of look, so it kind of looks like it's, you know, painted wood that the shingles are made out of. So yeah, right now we are in disaster crisis mode. Yeah, I think it's gonna be fixable. Here's the bell. This is just I coated it turquoisey green with craft paint and then just dry brushed some brass onto it. Actually, it looks half decent. Like these areas at the top I struggled to get brass on, so I think I'm gonna have to go in with a real brush and not just like a massive dry brush, and really try to get some brass on top of that. But I kind of like how this is looking. I think it looks pretty neat right now. Okay. All right, I'll be back with you as soon as I fix this disaster. Okay, so we have successfully put on the oil wash. I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. I finally feel like I'm sort of getting a vision or finally seeing the vision as to what I wanted this to look like when I started it. I do like how the oil leaves all these kind of neat little grime spots. The shingles, I gave them another coat. Now they got some dirtiness on them too. But now, right now, all of the panels, you can also kind of make out the like sort of reds and greens. They're supposed to, I don't know exactly what they're supposed to be. Maybe like, you know, some different types of dust or rust accumulation or something. But I do like how they kind of just break up the front, give a little more visual interest. Some green spots I added. I don't know if you can really see, they didn't really last through that coat of brown very well. But you can tell like the stucco panels that are supposed to be white have gotten very brown, obviously. So I'm probably going to go in with a sponge and just try to reintroduce some of that white
to these. Then I'm gonna give everything a bone dry brush. And then we'll be on to basically adding the details, but the houses are finally like almost finished. This bottom wood texture actually came out really nice. I'm quite happy with how that looks. All the like oil paint went and like got soaked into it, whereas all these, you know, I honestly, next time I might just try not Mod Podging at all, and then not mess with any acrylic paints and just see how it goes going directly to oil paints. I will have to constantly like wait multiple hours and like varnish everything if I do that, which would probably get pretty annoying. But I'm just really happy with how these oils came out, and I think I'm gonna play a lot more with them whenever I do my next piece. This house, this one you can see a little bit more of that green. Oh yeah, a little bit more of that green. It's kind of hidden in there, but you can see it. Especially once I go with another sponged on white, these sort of kind of like probably more distracting details than I want them to be will get nice and sort of hidden behind that coat. Especially after the dry brush, I think all these like spots where all the grime from the like oil wash will probably become a bit more subtle, look slightly more realistic maybe. The church, I'm actually quite happy with how it looks now. These reds have been toned down. We got beginnings of like where I'm going to be putting the moss in between the stones. Uh-oh, missed a spot right there. Well, that'll get mossed over too. The wood looks, well, God, it definitely looks better in person than it does on camera. The wood actually looks a lot better now. It does look closer to wood. Again, we got some like more pooling areas than would be ideal here. You can also see all the oil is rubbing off onto my fingers. So I think I'll probably varnish anything before going on to the next step. Oh, right, I still gotta checker these bad boys. Make this a cool looking floor. The inside, just all looking a whole lot better. I did goof up a bit though, but as you can see on this church, so I wasn't using sponges, because sponges, you know, all right for a model to wipe up some of that excess oil, but on a piece of terrain, you need 100,000 sponges. So I've been using this like auto shop towel or whatever instead, and I use that just to wipe off a bit of the excess on the surface. But on this first building, I was scrubbing instead of just like dabbing, and I accidentally took a chip out, so that'll have to get covered in moss too. You can see I did a second chip right there. Whoopsies. But I do think after like a nice dry brush of bone, really pick up some of the stone textures here, this will look a lot better. I will say, I was kind of surprised that, it's hard to see here, but the in-between, these tiles, some of it actually, the like wash did not like soak into. So it's pretty imperceptible, so I don't think I'm gonna worry about it or try messing with it or anything. I think I'll just leave it. But that's the exact kind of thing that I would have expected oil washes to like get into. So I guess maybe this foam was still too absorbent. Yeah. Alright, the other building. Bed Bop Billy. Looking pretty good, looking like a pretty solid Mordheim house. So we got a balcony, we got this little thing. All looking pretty decent. Okay, and the bell tower. I am now wishing that I kind of, oh god, maybe put like extra timbers inside the arch. I think that would have looked pretty good to make this look more like a real structure. But if I were to build it again, that is what I would do. I decided, yeah, I'm going to use the rope. I also realized that I can kind of, you know, make a little physical aspect here where you could like pull the rope and then shake this bell back and forth. So I think I'll like glue in some like toothpicks or something right here and not actually glue the bell in, just because I think that's kind of funny. Maybe I can make a way to make the actual dongle thing inside. Swing too. I think that could be fun. The church. It's all looking pretty good though. Alright, so I'm gonna, yeah, varnish everything, dry brush everything. Oh, and do some sponging. Alright, I'll check back on you in a minute. Oh, okay, so we have finally nearly reached the end game. Okay, the houses. Oh, everything looks nice and proper now. Everything, this I would be happy to put on the table. Not just acceptable, but I would be happy with it. All that is left now is to put on the final details, all the graffiti and all that nonsense, and it'll be done. So basically what I've done, I've stippled. I was going to use the sponge originally, but I decided screw it. I'm just going to use a brush and stipple everything on instead. I stippled on the whites to get them back. I stippled on the blues on the roof, the red onto this roof. All of that stuff. Whee! All these houses, boom, done. These guys, I stippled some white and black onto these things to add some checkerboard, which I do think makes it look quite Mordheim-y. I'm quite a fan of that checkerboard pattern. Everything else, I did the old bone dry brush over absolutely everything. The house, or not the house, the bell tower was looking a bit cartoony with all the red, so I just stippled black onto everything, onto all the red surfaces, just to sort of bring it back down. I think it looks a lot better with the black. Yeah, it was a little fire station-y looking with all the red. But yeah, all the wood textures. I'm honestly, again, really quite happy with how well, specifically like these sort of boards down here, with just using that like plank of wood and just scraping board textures into it. Well, it doesn't look, I don't have a ton of light here, but it looks pretty good in person. The insides I just kept because I wanted to keep all that nasty sort of grimy texture. And I think it makes sense that the insides, they don't bother, well, I guess they probably would paint them, but I guess that they get nastier. I don't know. I just think it looks better with the browns on the inside and then the whites on the outside. Yeah, if you get real close, you can kind of still see that this white is just on top of that grime texture, which is probably not great. But at a distance, you can't even tell that. You can't even see. But I do think, as an addition to the moss and the graffiti and the blood splatters, I will also be doing a little bit of grime streaks, where some like water has been running down. Also, I now am very much so noticing how I accidentally used a bit of a darker wash on one of these than on the other one. Also, my craft room, it got so horrifically dirty and so horrifically cluttered. I just had to burn that to the ground and then dedicate a new room to be my craft room. So, you know, we'll give that other one to, I don't know, someone. We'll figure that out. But yes, oh, everything is coming together. So close to the end. All right. I'll come back to you guys when we're truly 100% done.
Mr. Evrot is helping me find my glue gun.
It's finally finished. Well, pretty much. I still need to add posters and blood splatters. And then it'll be truly finished. You know, we got the turf of Don Crocleone. What else? The kill. What else other graffiti do we add? Oh, right. Henchman wanted, no bovie need apply. That one might be a little edgy, but, you know, I made sure to sing Irish rebel songs for 18 hours outside of the British embassy to make up for it. Do you have any on this one? Nope, that was graffiti-less. Yeah, maybe I should add even more graffiti. Slugs was here. Shout out to that one D&D movie. Thus'll ways to tyrants. A lot of this stuff is, I decided to make this graffiti more specific to the D&D world that my brother and I have made for our skirmish game to take place in. Right, so yeah, we got all the moss done. I'm pretty happy with it. I think it looks pretty much how I wanted, with that sort of Minecraft mossy cobble effect. Really add some color to these stone pieces. What else did we add? Oh right, all the windows. The windows I think look pretty good. We added some oxidation to that verdigris, whatever you call that. And we got the rusty metal inside parts. Oh man, pretty happy with all this turned out.
the bell tower, the, you know, whoosh, whoosh. We got the functional, uh-oh, it's a little stuck. Probably could have made this sort of interactive bit. Oh, there we go. And you know, you can pull the bell and ring it. By ring it, I mean it doesn't actually. Maybe another thing I will eventually add is a little dongle bit, because right now it's just empty on the inside. Oh man, I was looking at Reddit for some more inspiration. I saw this post on Reddit about someone who made a bell tower, where it like fallen and like crushed through the floorboards, and I realized like, oh man, that is such a good, you know, storytelling, immersive piece idea. I wish I had stolen that, but whatever. We got the bell tower inside instead, which I think the bell looks pretty cool inside as it is. Oh man, yeah, just very, very happy with how everything has turned out. You know, something I was thinking about is, so all in all, from start to finish, I think this probably took me somewhere in the range of like 45 to like 50 episodes of like Behind the Bastards to finish. And I realized, like, well, that's honestly, that's pretty close, you know, just a touch more than one good old proper work week. And I was thinking, like, okay, if I wanted to do this for money, if I wanted to make money off of this, right, in order for this to be worth my while, especially after the cost of, like, materials and stuff, I'd probably have to try to make like $1,000 off of the amount of effort and time and resources and all that stuff to make these things. I realized if I did that, I'd have to sell these each for like $160, give or take, in that range. And I was thinking to myself, like, would I buy these for $160? And I don't know. I think maybe a bit less than that. Maybe 80, 100, 100-ish around. So, you know, that was just something I was thinking about. The moral of that story, I guess, is that I need to I gotta up my, both the speed that I make these with, which honestly, God, I hate sub-assembly so much. But I think I might have to. Like, if I had just, like, painted the tiles, at least base coated them beforehand, then cut them out, and then glued them on, there's a lot of little finagly bits that would have been a lot easier to get to. The windows, you know, probably could have done the whole windows section as, like, a sub-assembly piece, which probably would have sped up the process by quite a bit. What else could I have done faster? I don't know. I think there's just like a ton of little things that I could have done differently just to make the whole process go a bit quicker. And just like quality-wise, I definitely learned some lessons about what kind of stuff does work and what doesn't work. Like this mossy texture, like it really clumped up. I did the old just mix flock and PVA together. And I wish I kind of had a little bit of, like, spackle left over for me to mix in to make it more of, like, a paste, rather than it was just kind of clumps that I had to, like, mush and mash into the crevices. It was kind of difficult to work with. As for the texture of the walls, well, you know, that tiny little tub of spackle was not enough, so I had to mix it in with some of that, like, texture stuff that I had from a different project. And I do kind of prefer the look of just the straight up wet, smooth texture spackle that I put on my old buildings without that sandy grit kind of look. Overall, I do think the new ones look a whole lot better than the old ones. I do kind of honestly like the full, like the white plastery thing going all the way to the wood, rather than I kind of tried to get a little artsy with the whole, like, you know, there's a lot of brown in between with where the wood and the plaster is because of how I painted these. But overall, I think like the shapes of these are a whole lot more interesting. The colors I think are a lot better. You can tell I put a whole lot more time and effort into like the shingles and stuff.
these ones I ended with the oils because I didn't want to have to varnish and do all that nonsense. I just oiled them up as the last step. These ones I oiled, then varnished, and then dry brushed to finish them off. And I do think that little bit of dry brush adds a good fair bit of readability to like each of the individual planks. Yeah, just very, very happy with how all of these turned out. Got quite a sense of accomplishment right now. Now I just need to become friends with someone who has a really nice printer so that I can get them to print out some posters for me. I'll slap those on, then add some blood splatters, and then I can finally call these truly good and done. Whew, okay guys, here is how everything looks on the table. Oh man. It definitely, now it looks like a real, proper Mordheim table. Oh man. We've got all these bridges, a million little different opportunities for various diving charges and such. Look at all these dwarves and possessed cult members. I love that little pirate dwarf, he's pretty cool. The old Guy Fieri warlock here. Oh man. Yeah, I think next, I need a few just pieces of general sort of scatter terrain, like little fountains and statues, wells, stuff like that. But yeah, here it is. The Tribulation of Heathen Gate. Featuring Tomble and the Boondogglers. Quite happy with how everything has turned out. I'm very excited to finally give this board a chance to finally actually play some games. I also think I might need some just general roads to put on the table too. I also think this whole neoprene mat has got to go. I got to get some nice, natural, proper textures on the ground. A good old proper board with sand and all of that jazz. But yes, I'm very, very happy with how this has turned out. Hopefully I can do some more stuff like this in the future. I think that'd be very fun to do. I also think I might need to, well, you know, upgrade my Huawei phone or something, get a proper camera, maybe get a real actual camera holder doodad thing too. But, man, yep, this is it. The sense of I don't know, completion or whatever finally washing over me. It's a good feeling. Okay, well, that is it. I will check back in with you guys next video now. I'll see you guys then.